The gruesome calamities of the Dark Continent are prison wardens for something much, much worse. Hello, and welcome back to Suck War Central, or I guess today we're Dark Continent Central. My name is CJ, and as I record this, it is June 18th, and the return of Hunter x Hunter has just been announced. Unfortunately, I will be on clinical placement and so busy that just getting the chapter review out on time will be a major struggle, let alone an actual analysis, so this video is my attempt to create a theory that cannot possibly age poorly in the span of just 3 chapters. See, I believe that both knowing Togashi and using the context clues Hunter x Hunter has given us, I have come to a realization of sorts about what the Dark Continent might actually be and just why the hell it's so dangerous. So let's dive into just what the Dark Continent is hiding. From the start, we have been fed a series of incongruous details about the Dark Continent that tells a contradictory story of this fearsome new world. The Dark Continent is home to mysterious creatures, monstrosities like the 5 calamities and the chimera ants. It's an enormous, vast, insurmountable, inhospitable biosphere with eldritch horrors beyond imagination that eviscerate every single human attempt to plumb its depths, where even the pinnacle of humanity, Isaac Netero, had trouble surviving. But it's also a place where sapient creatures live, or once lived, possibly even humans. Quick tangent, sentient and sapient are 2 different things. I clarify this because I'm going to use the word sapient a lot in this video. Sentient means something with enough intelligence to have basic thoughts and emotions. Most animals are sentient. Sapient means human-like intelligence, so some chimera ants and magical beasts. Speaking of magical beasts, that's our first proof of sapient life on the Dark Continent. Inhabiting the ocean border between the New World and Lake Mobius, there exists a race of sapient magical beasts called the Gatekeepers, who grant entry to the Dark Continent, punish human survivors for their hubris, and send them back with a calamity to take a little horror home with them. Not to mention the guides who actually lead humans to the new world. They also apparently do not like bad manners. So this is kind of standard sci-fi fantasy stuff here, and if Hunter x Hunter were any other series, I would be a lot less interested in the why of all this. But Togashi loves to deconstruct things, which means he's always asking why. He's always interested in the why, and we, the reader, should ask that very same question. Why in the hell has a species or 2 of magical beasts set themselves up as the gatekeepers of the Dark Continent, and why are they so intent on punishing humanity? Keep that in mind for later. Next of all, we know for a fact that there is sapient life on the Dark Continent itself, and I'm not counting Dawn freaks here. First of all, eyes. I would say eyes count as sapient life. I mean, Nanaka is living proof of that. She has human-level intelligence. But you've also got to remember Brion, the botanical weapon, was said to be found in the ruins of a labyrinthine city. There is some sort of civilization that builds actual genuine cities on the Dark Continent. Oh, and briefly I want to shout out this manga image of the Dark Continent, which features several things that look like settlements, but we'll be taking it with a heaping helping of salt because, well, maybe all these random ass things are really out there, but maybe this is just metaphor or Jing's imagination or some such. We have no way to know, as none of these are specific creatures or sites that were mentioned by what we actually know of the Dark Continent based on the 5 calamities or on this iconic panel of it. Heck, maybe it's even Gon's imagination because he's the one who's having all this explained to him. However, given that Jing has read the book written by Dawn Freaks, there's at least a chance that this image actually shows us some genuine sites to be found on the Dark Continent. Also, even before eating any humans, the chimera ant queen was clearly sapient and had genuine inner monologues, to the point that she personally suspected she might have some human DNA in her. However, the worker ants she gave birth to were just dumb animals who obeyed her until she got a taste of human. What does this mean? I believe it's proof that A, chimera ants are not sapient by default, and therefore B, their natural ecosystem of the Dark Continent is one where they do in fact eat sapient life on a regular enough basis for a chimera ant queen to, have that intelligence. This queen was born from an ant that ate intelligent creatures. If human-like intelligence the way the queen has were a trait inherent to the chimera ants, then surely the ants she gave birth to would also have that kind of intelligence, right? And then let's talk about Brion, the botanical weapon. The kanji translated as weapon, heiki, specifically implies a tool or instrument used by somebody else. Ergo, Brion is not just some wild creature. It was deliberately and intentionally created and requires skill to quote-unquote wield. So all that to say, we have actual genuine proof of multiple intelligent races living on the Dark Continent. And as you may recall before, I was talking about how humans could also exist or have once existed on the Dark Continent. For starters, Beyond Netero declares this outright, saying humanity's ancestors migrated from there. And on the one hand, it's really hard to trust anything he says in this entire speech. We found out later he was mostly talking out of his ass and feeding the masses a romantic view of his true goals to sucker them in. But at the same time, Beyond is the foremost expert on the Dark Continent, having read the entire Journey to the New World book and having survived the journey to the Dark Continent twice. So, if that were all the evidence we had, I would probably just make passing mention of it here and not put too much stock in the idea. However, there is a key piece of symbolic importance that, granted, a lot of other people have pointed out, but it's worth mentioning. For all the jokes I make about Australia actually being the Dark Continent, it's not the real-life Dark Continent. Back in the days of the British Empire, Europeans frequently referred to Africa as the Dark Continent because it's so spooky and mysterious, and making foreign places seem dangerous, mysterious, and exotic is something that settler colonialist empires tended to do for a variety of reasons. You know this is true because they made a board game about it. However, Africa is actually where the human race first evolved before spreading across the globe, so like, if humanity came from the Dark Continent IRL, maybe it's the same in Hunter x Hunter. Furthermore, the nature of the Dark Continent calamities themselves, I believe, is evidence for humans existing in the New World itself. See, from an evolutionary standpoint, these things don't make a lot of sense without humans in the picture. Every single one of them seems designed to directly target humanity in some way. Let's go through them one by one and talk about that, Back to Brion here. It appears to be on a human head, and is in fact the perfect size to fit around a person's skull perfectly. The body might be Brion's, it's true, but based on this image of the calamity's victims, I and many other readers have over the years thought that Brion probably takes your head off and explodes out your stomach like a case of bad diarrhea. Also, the narration specifically specifies that Brion is a sphere, not a sphere-headed creature, so this body likely does not in fact belong to it. So this plant creature seems to have been designed specifically to brutally massacre humans because it's very good at that, having killed hundreds, thousands even. It's also worth noting that Brion was found within the labyrinthine city, the same place as the panacea herbs that could cure thousands of different illnesses. This strikes me as intentional. Brion was apparently some sort of anti-human defense measure that the human explorers triggered by entering the city. So it seems like the inhabitants of this city were some kind of bioengineers. Here's a quick tangent for a crackpot theory. What if the city itself only appeared to the explorers to be abandoned ruins because they were overgrown by vegetation, and the plants that live there are the intelligent life we're looking for? If it can be gas and ants, why can't it be plants? It'd be a way to make the Dark Continent live up to the totally alien, eldritch mystique currently surrounding it, that's for sure. And it would make sense why all the mystical stuff and supernatural crazy stuff found in that particular city is plants. Because the creatures that live there are plants. It's plants all the way down, except for the city, which was presumably rock or stone or whatever. Anyway, let's move on. Let's talk about I, not to be confused with AI, because while they can both generate random crap for you, this one doesn't want your water, she just wants your liver. I is, I think, the weakest case for the anti-human thing I'm talking about here. Yes, it is a parasite that relies on intelligence and probably love. See my Aluka video for more details on that. But we have already established that there are multiple sapient races on the Dark Continent, so in theory, I could exist to target one of them. Humans encountering it could have just been a happy accident for the creature, as opposed to ecological intention or evolution. However, do consider that what makes I dangerous is not its power, but human selfishness. Also consider that, like the other calamities, it is found close-ish to the shoreline of Lake Mobius and near a thing that humans want. It's just awfully convenient that this keeps happening. I mean, look at this map of the expeditions. Every expedition made it a good ways inland. Yes, this might not look like much, but check out the Lake Mobius map for scale in the middle. They traveled the length of several countries through this supposedly inhospitable place just fine. but it was always when they reached the location of the thing they were actually searching for that a calamity appeared and started slaughtering them. Yes, the Federation of Ochima got killed before they reached the swamps where nitro rice was found, but even so, Ochima's expedition was to the south, and they still made it a good chunk of the way in before shit went sideways for them. So I think my point stands. It's very suspicious that the areas of the Dark Continent that don't seem to have anything people care about are clearly relatively harmless, but the minute they head in the direction of whatever treasure they're after, they get fucking jumped by the average resident of Queensland, Australia, who abruptly cancels their tourist visa to the land of the living. Again, just something to keep in mind for now while we move on to Hellbell. Personally, I don't get what's so scary about these guys. I mean, I'm pretty sure I see like 5 of them every day on my trip into town to get groceries. Yeah, New South Wales is really not that bad. We only get Hellbells. Western Australia has to deal with Pap and and Queensland gets fucking everything. Jokes aside, Hellbell is another creepy crawly that just feels off to me. It's a snake that infects its prey with homicidal desire and like, why? Why though? What benefit could this possibly provide it? Generally speaking, snakes evolved venom for 2 reasons: to help with digestion or to subdue prey. Key word here, subdue. Infecting prey with homicidal madness is kind of the exact opposite of subduing it. In what world is venom that makes the boys go loco more useful for grabbing a bite than the venom that just fucking kills you? Is the Hellbell immune to being targeted by the infected creature or what? If the purpose were truly to feed, venom that drives the prey into a frenzy, which riles it up, whence it could attract the attention of something else that would eat said creature, or it could flee away from the snake, is a terrible idea. A discreet, fast-acting venom is just evolutionarily the best call, hence why no IRL snakes have the madness juice. And look, I know you might think I'm getting hung up on a stupid little detail that doesn't matter, insert relevant Grant Morrison quote or whatever, but respectfully, Grant Morrison has never read Hunter x Hunter because these are the exact stupid little nonsense deals that Togashi puts a ton of thought into, like the parent-child account relationships or the Lake Mobius shipping system, because he's a sick, twisted man and this kind of thing is fun for him. I'm kidding, mate. It's fun for me too. It's part of why I love Hunter x Hunter. Anyway, Hellbell seems to be evolved for maximum carnage. It kills people, and it kills a lot of people. From this, we can determine that either A, some sapient life form selectively bred Hellbell to have this ability, or B, convincing humans to stop playing co-op Subnautica and start playing Fortnite in the swamp is somehow an evolutionary benefit to this thing. And now, so far, you could argue that most of these could apply to other sapient life, and maybe Hellbell's venom making humans homicidal is just a funny little coincidence the way some drugs that cure cancer in mice turn human brains into meat pudding and whatnot. But Pap kinda blows a hole in this. I mean, it is quite literally called the human-keeping beast. Much like your local insecure bisexual dom, it exists to keep humans as pets. So look, this thing, to me, is proof that humans either are or were integral components of the Dark Continent ecosystem, to the point that one or more creatures evolved or were genetically engineered specifically to prey on them. More on that later. But let's be thorough and talk about the Zobae disease, a disease that grants people immortality but turns them into these mindless monsters. Well, assuming it doesn't flat out kill you as it did the majority of the Kukanyu Kingdom's expedition. It is entirely possible that someone just ate the wrong bat and contracted the disease that was never meant for humans, but it's just kind of odd. It has a ridiculously high fatality rate, and even diseases with 100% kill rates like rabies and prion diseases have very long incubation periods that allow them to spread. We're talking years to decades. However, I have a theory that makes it all make sense. The V5 scientists believe that what happened was this. The Kukanyu Kingdom went on their expedition, collected the alchemical plant Metallion, and contracted this disease on the way back. And to top it all off, the plant withered and died before they could even bring it home. But what if what happened was this? The area surrounding where Metallion was kept contained the virus. The humans caught the virus on their way to the alchemical plant, remaining blissfully unaware they were infected during its harmless incubation period, and took the plant. Only on the way back did they start to show symptoms, and what's more, the virus spread to the plant, killing it. Or perhaps the virus came from the plant itself. What if improperly collecting the sample caused spores of some kind to be released, infecting those who were too close? Or heck, maybe as the plant withered and decayed, that's when the virus actually got loose. Maybe that released the virus into the air somehow. It would explain why not every member of the expedition actually contracted the disease. Either of these explanations would make a lot more sense than the official story to me, but we're getting into the weeds here. It's time, several minutes into the video, to actually lay out my thesis statement. I believe that humanity is being intentionally kept prisoner on Lake Mobius and isolated from the rest of the Dark Continent. I mean, think about Togashi's writing ever since the Chimera Ant arc. This man is not a fan of the human race, not one bit, and is always on about how dangerous and corrupt humanity is. Emphasis on the danger. I mean, look at the Chimera Ant arc, where the end result is that the ants never even remotely stood a chance against human beings. For all Meruem's seemingly unstoppable power, all it took was one big-ass poisonous explosion to solve that, and humans do that for breakfast. Humans invent those in their sleep. This whole arc was, well, it was about a lot of things, but a big part of it was humans versus nature. On the one hand, you've got the Chimera Ants, representing all of nature's terror rolled into one pathogenic monstrosity, and on the other, you have human institutions. Shoot, representing prison. Knuckle, representing banking. Moral, representing big tobacco. Jokes aside, humanity won easily. They steamrolled nature. Humanity is terrifying. I mean, this was basically Netero's dying message. As cruel as nature can be, humans will always be crueler. And why do you think Togashi decided to place the Succession War arc where he did? This is, in my opinion, by far the most grimdark story arc in Hunter x Hunter, and it's not even close. It's a crash course in all of humanity's most wicked institutions and deeds, their corruption and atrocities. A look into the human race as it exists in Hunter x Hunter from a point of view so bleak, haunting, and loveless, it makes Morena Prudo look correct. It's a victory lap on Togashi's thesis that while some good individuals exist, the human race is by and large irredeemably evil, malicious, and dangerous in its vast majority. And more importantly, it's showing us this is the kind of corruption and depravity that who or whatever set up the ocean border, the guide, and the gatekeepers is trying to protect themselves from. Lake Mobius was engineered to imprison the bottomless malice of the human spirit and discourage all attempts at escape. The New World is meant to seem like a hostile, unapproachable wasteland rather than a penal colony. It's psychological warfare against the human race, and far more effective than letting them know the truth, that they're prisoners. Letting them know the truth makes it clear that humanity is powerful, and the denizens of the New World are afraid of them. It would embolden them to see the New World as an enemy that can be conquered. However, as is, the Dark Continent appears to be a mysterious eldritch nightmare. It's unknown in every sense of the word, and that mystery makes it more imposing to the humans, more intimidating, and discourages expedition, unless you're beyond Netero, because, once again, beyond Netero is the bottomless malice of the human spirit. And then think about each of the treasures, things that would benefit any civilization. It would take a sapient creature to understand how to harness the panacea herb, the unmanned rock, Metallian, Trinity elixir. They're always guarded by some sort of incredibly dangerous creature or bioweapon. What if these are the settlements or dwelling places of non-human races, or at least near them, and each of the 5 calamities is their anti-human defense measure? Anything the humans could use to advance their civilization and technology, the thing that makes them so dangerous as established by the Chimera Ant arc, is gatekept by some human-slaughtering abomination. Well, side note, it's humans' evil and malice that gives them the drive to be dangerous, and their technology that enables them to be dangerous, but you get the picture. Any one of these treasures could advance the human race by decades, make them powerful enough to truly conquer the New World. And that's why those who live in the Dark Continent guard them so closely. It's why, despite seeming so impossibly inhospitable to humans, multiple intelligent species are able to live there. Because while I'm sure it's no walk in the park, the rest of the Dark Continent is likely nowhere near as dangerous to humans as the ring designed to keep them from exploring it. It's why the gatekeepers and guides are so set on punishing humanity for their hubris by making them take a calamity home with them. It's a psyop against the literal entire human race, and to gaslight them into believing that the Dark Continent is a Pandora's box that they'd be better off not opening. And to bring things full circle, this makes the symbolic choice of the name Dark Continent a lot more fitting, because while it was the Europeans who came up with the name Dark Continent to portray Africa as wild, untamed, and dangerous, they turned out to be more deadly than the people who actually lived there, and the history books are filled with millions of pages on the atrocities they committed there. If the Dark Continent in Hunter x Hunter is the same, then this makes Togashi's choice of name for it one last perfect symbolic touch. So if all of this is true, you might ask, why not just, kill all the humans? Yeah, think about why the humans need to be imprisoned. Their malice knows no bounds, right? It's entirely possible that the idea of unceremoniously massacring an entire species, which came to us in like 5 seconds after hearing this theory, is just so evil that the species that live on the Dark Continent never would, or if they're alien enough, maybe they never could conceive of it on their own. And given the danger humans pose, this is a surprisingly merciful treatment of them. They get to just chill in the middle of a lake, and they only ever have to find out when they decide to fuck around. And come on, this is Yoshihiro Togashi we're talking about. You guys know damn well that somehow the Dark Continent is going to be a story about how much people fucking suck, because that's how it always goes with this guy. Another counter-argument you could anticipate with this theory is that if the creatures of the Dark Continent want humanity to stay sealed away, just what exactly is the point of the guide helping them to actually reach it? That, my friends, is another part of the psyop. If the humans are simply left to their own devices, they will eventually devise a means of traversing the dangerous waters to the Dark Continent. However, the guide exists to foster dependence. The guide's existence and the gatekeeper regulating access to the waters past the ocean border makes it so that instead of trying to devise some way to access the Dark Continent at their leisure, humans will seek out the guide and thus, if Jing's words are to be taken literally, make a contract of some kind with the gatekeeper to take back a calamity if their expedition fails. Why would humans try to develop a new technology that doesn't seem to be necessary after all? Heck, if we really want to get crazy with it, the guide might even sink human expeditions that seem qualified to lead a successful exploration beneath the waves, while only allowing through the weak and unqualified, hoping they'll fail and come face to face with the ragebait snake or some other thing to take back to the human world as a reminder of how horrifying the Dark Continent is and further discourage human exploration. Although that is a very sinister theory, and maybe that's just my bottomless malice talking. Honestly, it seems to be working on Steiner of the V5. The more he learns about the horrors of that place, the more sure he is that humanity should not, in fact, make this journey. Really, if your goal is to manipulate humanity and keep them frightened and cautious of returning to the Dark Continent, the whole guide and gatekeeper approach actually makes a ton of sense and provides all sorts of advantages when it comes to keeping the greatest of calamities confined to the prison that is Lake Mobius, and it worked on the vast majority of the human race for a long time. With that being said, there we have it, folks. My theory on what the Dark Continent is. I think it's a very Togashi move. He likes to not exactly subvert, and deconstruct feels too trite, ignore the fact that I said that very word at the start of this video. I'd say he likes to dissect tropes, meticulously picking them apart, before stitching them back together in a new and unique way. People always say about wild animals, it's more scared of you than you are of it, and I think this sentiment may have influenced him here. The eldritch horror unknown Deathland actually trying to keep itself safe from humans would be a very Togashi way to do exactly that and turn the whole genre trope on its head, while furthering his favorite little pet idea that humans are the real monsters. A tired cliche in the hands of most other authors it may be, but Togashi really does it like no one else. Whether you think I'm onto something or completely off my rocker, I hope you let me know in the comments, and I hope you have a wonderful day.